Welcome friends! In this series I play a selected retro console or arcade game and then follow that with a simple question. Is it engaging or is it enraging? Today's game is the original arcade release of Street Fighter and was released and published by Capcom on August 31st, 1987. It cannot be overstated just how large the influence of this early one-on-one fighting game became. Street Fighter also spawned many home conversions ranging from the excellent port produced by Alpha System for the TurboGrafx CD in 1988, renamed to Fighting Strip for some obtuse reason, all the way down to the 8th Circle of Hell where the Commodore Amiga port spewed out by Teartex resided. Teartex were arguably one of the gaming industry's most justifiably derided conclaves of lazy coding charlatan hacks that ever gathered under one roof, specialising in finding new and unique ways of producing truly despicable, shoddy and downright ham-fisted versions of all of your favourite arcade games. Ordinarily, producing a port of a one-on-one fighting game with all the special moves and sound effects missing, chronic input lag, utterly broken hit detection, and playing at 6 frames per second would be a source of shame for most software houses. However, with a company as unashamedly unabashed as Teartex, this was just another shambolic triumph to add to their litany of utterly hopeless software releases. With Street Fighter's successor coming out to huge acclaim 4 years later in 1991, and spawning dozens of successful games and a world-beating franchise. Not you! It's easy to become misty-eyed about the original game, and to automatically think it was birthed on a clear summer's day from the solid gold teat of Zeus himself. As such, I'll look at this genre-defining game in isolation from its monolithic successor, as I explore if this game is engaging, or if it's as much fun as having all your teeth knocked out with a feather duster. The first stop on our digital whirlwind tour is with the game's story. It's a very brief stop, as the story is about as threadbare as that 40-year-old rug that lives in the limitless purgatory between your attic and the recycling bin. The plot begins with the game's final boss Sagat, otherwise known as the Emperor of Muay Thai, hosting the first World Warrior tournament with the distinction of King of the Hill being bestowed upon the winner. Out of the 12 characters in the game, you get to play as a stunningly vast array of exactly one character. You will only play as the Japanese plucky upstart Ryu, who joined the tournament to prove his strength and for no other reason. Well, we can increase your character choices by 100% if you include playing as Ryu's sparring partner and longtime rival Ken, by playing a 2-player game and smearing Ryu up the nearest wall while burning an extra credit in the process. Let's not kid ourselves though. Besides a red gi and blonde hair, Ken is an absolute photocopy of Ryu all the way down to his moveset and animations. Ryu is then pitted against the other 10 competitors across 5 world stages that include the United Kingdom, the USA and Tailland. A country that isn't worthy to kiss the boots of the mighty nation of Thailand from the Game Boy version of Street Fighter 2. The vetting process for these competitors has a bar set just high enough to be buried 6 feet underground, as we have the likes of the following cabal of jerks. Here's Sagat, host and competitor in the tournament. Bet that was a tough choice for him. Next we have Adon, mini Sagat, forever residing in the shadows of his vastly superior mentor. Then there's Birdie, a nightclub bouncer held back in the tournament due to ill health, apparently. To conclude, we have Mike, a felon convicted of robbery who later learned to box in prison and then proceeded to kill an opponent in the ring. Well, this tournament would be toxic waste without such moral fibre on display. After selecting Ryu from the available plethora of non-choices, the first thing that will strike you is that for 1987, the graphics are excellent with nice chunky sprites and richly detailed backgrounds. However, graphics are only one part of a game, and no one would be happy to buy the equivalent of a richly adorned Rolls Royce, only to realise that it arrives with a plasticine engine and a CD of revving noises voiced by a toddler. So, do the other elements of this game prop up what is admittedly a very impressive veneer? Well, let's put it this way. While your eyes are being gently caressed by the graphics, your ears are being subjected to the sound of a syphilitic gibbon angrily bellowing at a rock. The music ranges from the generally harsh-sounding themes heard on the pre-fight screens, all the way up to the fury-inducing cack-handy collection of abstract noises masquerading as music on the Birdie and Sagat levels. The fighting sound effects on offer are dull bowls of thick mud, and the game's 3 lines of voice text give the impression that during the recording, the microphone was stuffed inside a sleeping bag and the words were spoken by a voice actor recently recovering from severely botched dental surgery. However, the sounds in general are merely the flies buzzing around the host turd recently deposited by our next subject on offer, the gameplay. Be prepared to stand at the arcade cabinet, mouth agape, as you encounter a sanity-melting difficulty level not remotely helped by the seemingly random hit detection on offer. Due to your opponents being egregiously overpowered, some rounds take longer to announce and begin than they do to play in full. You don't believe me? How about these gems? Throwing your money at the sun would be a more interactive experience than the near non-existent participation you have with this total dreck. So, what do we have available to help us counteract the barrage of cheap filth coming from your opponents? Well, throws were seemingly invented in 1988, as they are absent from this experience, and blocking only serves to nail you to the floor, so you can be stun locked in place and then promptly beaten to death about a second later than before. At least you have 3 different strengths of kick and punch, so you can add an extra 3 layers of frustration to the mix. If you can ignore the overall impression that every other frame of animation has been incinerated to provide an overall flipbook aesthetic to the flow of the game, then you'll come across your true nemesis, the controls. In addition to the horrifying input lag, jumping feels floaty, imprecise, and somehow jerky as hell all in one go. The real button mashing desperation commences when you dare to use Ryu's 3 special moves that most one-on-one fighting enthusiasts will have imprinted on their souls. We have the Hadouken, that tears such a significant chunk off the enemy's health that it makes the game's Etch-a-Sketch graphics rendering system panic and slow the game down to a crawl, the Shoryuken punch that always finds its mark, except it mostly doesn't, and the that thing, that hangs Ryu in the air with a spinning kick that has all the aerodynamic grace of a puppet with 2 snap strings. At least we're familiar with the execution of these moves. Wrong! Let's take the famous Hadouken, with its universally known execution of down to forward and punch. In Street Fighter, on the other hand, you must press and hold punch, roll from down to forward, and then release punch in quick succession. This one system is so clumsy and downright counterintuitive that it annihilates the fluidity of tactically using the special moves, denigrating the whole experience to a button-mashing, luck-fueled nightmare. If that wasn't enough for you to throw in the towel and storm out of the arcade in an indignant huff, then you could play Street Fighter on the original Deluxe cabinet instead. This Deluxe option came with 2 pressure pads for you to physically strike instead of using the latest 6-button scheme. Can you imagine physically punching the typically badly maintained pressure pad, holding it down, circling the joystick and then letting go of your punch to execute a spinning kick that has an 80% chance of not triggering and a further 80% chance of being ignored outright by the horrendous hit detection? With this final blow to any hope of a tactile response to your inputs, we can wear out our joysticks along with our welcome as we consider if this game is enraging or is it enraging. Following my overtly critical diatribe, it will surprise no one that I consider Street Fighter to be an enraging game. Although the graphics were extremely capable by 1987 standards, in isolation this game is the pinnacle of frustration in terms of its gameplay. However, I'm very grateful for the existence of this game, as it laid the foundations for Street Fighter 2, a game I consider to be one of gaming's greatest sequels and a vast improvement in every regard. Until next time on Engaging or Enraging, goodbye friends.